Hi everybody. Just a little plug for the book that I co-authored, the two books I should say, for IB psychology students. Book 1 is The Core Approaches and Book 2 is Applied Psychology, so all the options that you might take in the second year of your psychology course. Okay, so today's topic is cultural dimensions. It is part of the sociocultural approach. It is topic 2, culture and the effect on behaviour. Very interesting topic. The IB is an international, global qualification. So this kind of topic is tailor-made for IB psychology students. So the first thing I'd like you to think about is the idea of cultural misunderstandings and sensitivity to cultures which are different to your own. Pardon me. So just have a think. Can you think of any examples when you've been misunderstood, or perhaps someone has been insensitive towards you based on your culture? So you might want to pause the presentation here and have a little think about it. Maybe you want to make some notes. So maybe just pause the presentation here. Right, I can think of some. From my point of view, me misunderstanding others and others misunderstanding me. When I used to live in Japan many years ago, it took me a long time to adjust to the fact that Japanese people would often point at me and call me gaijin, which means alien or monster, a foreigner in Japanese, because the Japanese people are a very homogenous group, and a while ago, I don't know if it's the same now because this was 30 years ago, but were very curious about anyone who wasn't Japanese, and had a kind of an opinion that anyone who wasn't Japanese was a complete foreigner. They weren't aggressive or hostile. They were in fact incredibly welcoming and friendly and very nice. But it just took me a while to understand what it meant to be a minority. I'm from the UK. I am white. I don't ever feel that I'm in the minority. I'm very fortunate in not feeling like a lot of people might feel based on their ethnicity. You know, when people are racist and prejudiced towards people of different ethnicities. I'd never experienced what it means to be an outsider until I went to Japan. Now, luckily, it was all very positive attention, but that was, from my perspective, it took me a while to get used to that. And it was a real kind of journey of discovery for me as well, understanding Japanese sensitivities and ideas about life, and it was just a fantastic experience. Sometimes it was confusing, puzzling, but overall it was ultimately very, very enriching. Okay, so there are 2 videos here on cultural misunderstandings. They are quite amusing. At least one of them is quite funny. It looks at lots of TV adverts about how culture can get in the way of business, for example. So just take a couple of minutes and watch the videos now. Okay, so I'll let you watch those videos. Hopefully it will link properly for you. Please leave me a comment if it doesn't link. Okay, so you'd want to, I suggest pausing the presentation here and just see if you can insert the words into the spaces. So you'll see there are words there in blue at the bottom of the screen, and they need to go into the spaces in the paragraph above. So pause the presentation here and see if you can work out which words go where. Right, okay, I'm just going to go back here. I thought I'd actually inserted the words myself, but I hadn't. So let's see how good I am at doing this. Culture refers to the products of socialization. Hopefully you got that. The socialization being the process by which you become conditioned to and used to and follow the norms of whatever society you grow up in or you live in, with any organised group, society or nation. and involves a set of rules, norms, and customs that are agreed by the members of that group. Culture is active rather than passive. Really good point that culture is dynamic, it's flexible, it's not a static, stationary, unchanging phenomenon. So each of us contributes to the culture of the next person and are affected by them. Culture then is both made by humans and helps to make humans. It is a bi-directional process. So hopefully you got all those words in the right spaces. If you didn't, you can just pause the video, go back and correct it. Right, in terms of types of culture, we can broadly distinguish two different kind of qualities or attributes to culture. Surface culture is literally what you can see on the surface. So, what kind of clothes do people in this particular culture wear? What is their music like? What is their food like? Do they use their hands to eat with their food? Do they use knives and forks? Do they use chopsticks? Do they eat off a leaf? When I was in Malaysia, I had a wonderful curry off a big banana leaf. I ate it with my hands. What is their dance like? What are their rituals, the display like? What is their art, culture in terms of literature, theatre? What is that like? So it's basically what you can see of that culture. Deep culture is much more ingrained and may not be obvious. So deep culture is the idea that what you see on the surface is informed by what is deeper, the beliefs, the attitudes, the values, the opinions that you may not know just by looking at surface culture. You may make a huge mistake. You may insult somebody because you don't know the deep culture that underlies the surface culture. For example, in Japan, you never point with your chopsticks. It's incredibly rude. You never leave your chopsticks. If you have any rice left over, which by the way, in Japan, you're supposed to eat every grain of rice in your bowl, because that harks back to when there was a famine in Japan and sometimes people were literally living off a couple of grains of rice a day. But if you have any food, or particularly rice in your bowl, you do not stick your chopsticks in your rice. That's, again, it's very, very rude in Japanese culture. Okay, so let's have a go at this next task. So, which of these are surface culture and which show deep culture? So have a look at these 4 examples and pause the presentation and write down surface or deep after each of these examples. Okay, so let's see how you did. The first one, eating food with your hands. There's an example here. So that is something that you can see. It's literally on the surface. You can follow that particular tradition if you visit a country where that is prevalent. So that's surface culture. Okay, belief in reincarnation. That's this kind of little image down here. This is something that you would not necessarily know about unless you read up on the culture before your trip, unless you were familiar because of your own family or where you live or your religion, that this is part of the culture. Because it's not obvious, because it's not something that is necessarily tangible, this is deep culture, and it will inform at a very meaningful level the way that people within that culture live their life, practice their religion, etc. The idea that women cannot run a business. So you might think, oh, well, this is surface culture, because if women can't run a business, you wouldn't see any women running a business. But it's not that clear-cut or straightforward. This, again, is deep culture because it is an ingrained, well, I suppose, prejudice, really. The idea that males and females have very different roles and women are prevented from carrying out tasks and running their life maybe the way that they want to. So this is not quite as straightforward as it seems. This is something that goes at a deeper level. Living in houses made of clay, maybe perhaps like this example here. Obviously this is something that you can see You can compare houses made of clay, maybe compared to the house you live in. So this is surface culture. Okay, so this is a very interesting interview with, I think this is a Mexican-American teacher talking about the difficulties of prejudice really and culture within classrooms and how it can really impact negatively on students. So pause it here and watch the video. Right, now this is the main focus of our topic, Hofstede's cultural dimensions. This is a huge survey of IBM employees. Now IBM, you probably heard of, they are a massive global company, still very much involved in lots of different types of organisations and businesses across the world. I mean, they're huge. And between the years of 1971 and 73, Hofstede carried out a survey on cultural dimensions using IBM employees, specifically because they span so many countries. Now, this is a very interesting website. It really is fantastic. You have to spend a bit of time on this website to understand how it works. But once you understand how it works, it is pretty good, actually. So we'll come back to this slide in a minute, and we will go onto the website and we'll have a look at how it works. Just a note here that although the original research was carried out between 71 and 73, it is ongoing. It keeps being renewed, as it were, updated. I'm not quite sure when the last one was, but this is kind of an ongoing kind of snowball that keeps rolling down a hill, as it were. It just keeps going. Okay, so the research method, it's a large-scale survey. So it's not an interview. It is asking people to tick boxes, to give fixed responses to a range of closed questions. It would be impossible to carry out an interview and get meaningful data that you can analyse easily with such a huge sample. So large-scale surveys, basically a questionnaire with lots of participants, is the best way to do this. So if you were answering a question on cultural dimensions in the exam, and the question was explain one research method used within looking at culture and its effect on behaviour, you could use this. It's not really, well, I suppose it's a study. It's a huge ranging piece of research. It's not a study like a lab experiment is, but you can mention that the research method is a large scale survey. Now we're going to click on this in a minute, but for now I just want to talk you through it. You click on the link there and it takes you to the main page. It's not as obvious what to do when you first visit the site, so you have to kind of scroll down, you have to play around a bit, but once you do, you will love it. You will be on there for ages. What Hofstede did was he decided that culture could be stripped down into these dimensions. Power distance. Now, I'm not going to go through all of them because when you go on the website, that can tell you what each of them are. Now, individualism is kind of on the dimension with collectivism. I'm sure that you will be doing this in your psychology lessons if you haven't already. Oops, I've sped forward a bit. Masculinity, well, we all have an understanding of what masculine values are. There might be competitiveness, high levels of aggression, etc. Uncertainty avoidance is the idea of not wanting. If you have a high uncertainty avoidance, it means you want to know what's in store in the future. You don't like things being uncertain. So there's some examples of them. So what you do is you choose a country from their drop-down list. And when you go on, you'll see there are a lot of countries to choose from. It's really good fun, this website. And it gives you the score on each cultural dimension for that country. Now, the one that I focus on the most with my students is individualism and collectivism. These are percentages. So you can see that the UK scores very highly for individualism, which means that people in the UK tend to be self-focused. They value qualities such as independence, personal success, monetary success, standing on your own 2 feet, not relying on others. So power distance is low, 35, about, a third of the way there. Power distance is the extent to which you are happy to accept that some people will always have power and other people won't. So it's this acceptance of inequality. Now you can see for the UK it's 35. So it means that people in the UK would be more likely to protest at injustices, maybe go on strike if they feel that their company is treating them badly, etc. Masculinity is quite high, it's over halfway, but it's not as high as individualism. So I think the UK is still probably quite a fairly patriarchal culture, but maybe not as much as others. Uncertainty avoidance, again, fairly low. I have a theory that the richer a country is, the more affluent it is, the lower is their uncertainty avoidance. Because if you live in a country that's very poor, where you're not sure where your next paycheck is coming from, maybe you have a hand-to-mouth existence, you don't like not knowing what the future holds. You'd want a bit of security. If you have a good job, you're going to get paid, that maybe the government's going to look after you or your family's going to look after you. I think you have the luxury of not being that bothered about what the future might hold, being quite, happy to think that the future is a mystery. It is quite an indulgent kind of way to be, and you'll see the score for indulgence was high anyway in the UK. Okay, then the fun starts and you put in another country. Now what you will have to notice is that the original country you put in was, for me, it was blue. UK was blue, but then it's turned purple. So do be aware of that the blue scores are not the UK or your first country anymore. So I thought I'll put China in. Let's compare the UK to China. Now, in China, people are more resigned to the fact that maybe they haven't got as much power as other people. They are maybe less likely to get upset about it. But recent events in Hong Kong might tell you, well, maybe that's changing. You will notice that the UK is much higher on individualism than China is. Now, interestingly, that score's the same. I thought it had changed, but it hadn't. I'm getting confused with the changing colours. So do be aware that your original country will change colour when you put in a new country. Masculinity, very interesting. China and the UK are the same. And fairly similar for this one. I won't go into all of them because it's just going to take too long, but you can read up on them yourselves. And then what we do is put in a third country. I chose Brazil. Brazil now takes the blue colour. China goes purple and the UK goes green. So you can have a good look at the different colours. I'm quite surprised that Brazil is lower on masculinity. I thought Brazil would be higher on masculinity. That did surprise me. One of the things to remember here is that how many participants they had from these countries. Sometimes you may get a rather skewed effect because perhaps they didn't have as many participants in Brazil as they did in the UK and China. So you just have to think about that these are average scores, but there may be an average of a small number, which is likely to be less the kind of expected average that you would get from a larger sample. You know all about that because you do research methods. And if you've done your IA, you have to talk about mean averages and central tendency, etc. Okay, so let's see if we can get onto this site now. Okay, so clearly that's not going to work for me doing this presentation for you. I think what I'd have to do is come out of the PowerPoint and you have a go. But if there are any problems with this, just let me know. In fact, I'm going to try now just to see if I can go in, because if you can't really see the videos, it's going to be a bit difficult. Let's have a go. See if we can just copy and paste to here. Very good book that, you should buy it. Oh, right. Okay, let's try again. We won't give up yet. We won't give up yet. We'll see if we can do it. Have a look. Click and control and click. See if it's going to take us there. Is it going to take us there? Don't know. Are we going? Looks like something's happening here. So it may be that you can't click on it. Oh, here we are. That's brilliant. You can't click on it maybe with a full screen. You would have to maybe come out of the full screen. Have a play with it. I know my videos are not massively sophisticated, but hey, let's just do it. You'll notice all the measures down there. Now, if you want to know more about each measure, usually, oh, maybe it's not on this page. Description, does that give us a description of all the measures? I think there is. Read more about chosen countries. Okay, well, let's try it first. Okay, let's put in USA, United States. Okay, let's just have our, let's put that there. And then I think what you can do, if you read more about the chosen countries, oh, look how high they are in individualism. That's interesting, isn't it? Then it will tell you all about it. Yes, you have to put in a country first before you can actually read about the different cultural dimensions, right? So there we are with USA. There's the site. So as I say, don't despair if you're going, oh gosh, she said we could click on this and we can't. Just maybe come out of full screen, come out of slideshow, and you will find a way to get back into it. Yeah, so you add a third country, etc. It's really good. And then you just delete the countries. You'll just delete that and put more in. You can only do 3 at a time, which really you wouldn't want to do more than 3 because there's quite a lot there. Yeah, okay. So again, I've put some more videos on here because I think it's quite good fun to watch them anyway. Again, if you want to watch these, I don't know whether they're going to work from here. Yes, it is actually. That's good. Mine seem to work in this browser here, Internet Explorer. So if they don't work in your browser, maybe open a different one, Firefox or Chrome or whatever it is. I don't think mine were working very well in Chrome. Anyway, so that will tell you all about individualism, collectivism.
Individualism or collectivism?
You see, it's nice and straightforward. So actually, you should be able to just click on these dots and click on the link, and you can find about. Right, okay, so once you have looked at individualism and collectivism, let's think about which of the following statements are individualistic and which are collectivist. I focus on myself rather than my community, etc. Here they all are. Oops, sorry about that. Getting a bit ahead of myself there. Pause the video here, pause the presentation, write down whether you think these statements, each statement is individualistic or if it's collectivist. Quite hard to say after a while, those two words. So pause and have a go. Right, okay, so you've had a go. Let's see if you were right. The first one, focus on self, individualistic. A sense of togetherness, collectivist. Sense of responsibility towards wider family, collectivist. Freedom and independence, individualistic. An obligation not to bring shame or dishonour on family, etc., collectivist. Live my life the way I want to regardless of what my parents think, individualistic. Right, okay, so that is the end of the presentation. Again, I am shamelessly plugging my product here. 2 books that I co-authored, written by myself and another highly experienced IB psychology teacher. You can get them on Amazon. They are freely available to you. Well, not free. I'm afraid you have to pay, but they're very good value. Okay. Bye for now, IB psychology students, and I hope you stay fit and well.